Basically, ever since this conflict started, this latest iteration of the conflict, a lot of people have been asking me, have been asking in general, why don't the Palestinians get rid of Hamas? If we all agree Hamas is bad, we also keep saying that Palestinians are not the same thing as Hamas, and that in fact there's some anecdotal and some polling to suggest that Palestinians don't want to be ruled by Hamas. Why don't they just get rid of them? And I'm trying to explain in this column why that is. Gaza is a very unique place. It's been described as an open-air prison. Gazans are sort of hemmed in. They can't leave because Israel essentially has imposed an embargo on them. And for the past 17 years, Hamas has run the place. And Hamas has a monopoly on violence, so they're the guys with the guns. They run the economy, so they are the guys who control the money. They have foreign support, mostly from Iran, whereas ordinary civilians in Gaza depend on them for security, depend on them for their livelihood and their lives. So it's unreasonable, I think, and this is the argument I make, it's unreasonable for us, the wider world, to expect the Palestinians to rise up against Hamas. There's very little opportunity for them to do that while at the same time keeping themselves and their families safe. When people have tried that, they have disappeared or they have been killed. Hamas is absolutely ruthless about killing Palestinians. They don't care if tens of thousands of Palestinians die, as we're seeing right now. So they're dealing with a terrorist group that controls their lives, and they don't have the opportunity to rise up against them, and they have nobody willing to support them if they chose to rise up against them.
So we have some data actually that you cite in your piece from the Washington Institute. What did the Washington Institute find in terms of who Gazans would actually like to rule if Hamas were out of there?
I'm going to start with a caveat that it's almost impossible to conduct free and fair polling in a place like Gaza, because of course people are afraid to express themselves freely because they're keenly aware that anything they say against Hamas will be recorded, and there's a pretty good chance that there will be reprisals for that. But even despite that fear, polling has shown that Gazans would rather have the Palestinian Authority, which runs the West Bank, they'd rather have the Palestinian Authority ruling Gaza than Hamas. And that's quite something to say, because the Palestinian Authority is deeply corrupt, very inept, and quite unpopular. But people would rather have that than have Hamas. So, that tells you how desperate they are living in Gaza.
Well, it's very difficult. And I think about, when you leave a group of any people, right, Bobby, without access to basic needs or the ability to kind of chart their own way forward, then because people elected Hamas, right, 17 years ago, to lead. But
they did.
It gets to the core of the problem.
Yeah, so that's another accusation that is often thrown at the people of Gaza. Oh, you elected Hamas. You made your bed, you've got to sleep in it. So there are some things to consider there. Mm-hmm. When that election was held in 2006, Hamas, the choices people had were between a corrupt and inefficient Palestinian Authority led by Fatah, which is a different faction, and Hamas. And Hamas at that time, the campaign was an anti-corruption campaign. People were voting against Fatah just as much as they were voting for Hamas, and it was all about corruption. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider, it was 17 years ago. The vast majority of people who live in Gaza today never got a chance to vote. There's never been an election since, and Hamas has ensured that there will never be another election in Gaza as long as they're around. So the vast majority of people who live in Gaza today, who tend to be young people, did not vote for Hamas. They were born into a place run by Hamas, or they were children when the last election were held and not eligible to vote. So it's again another accusation that's thrown against them. It's an unfair accusation. The people who live in Gaza today are not responsible for Hamas. They didn't vote for them.
To what extent is Israel responsible for Hamas coming to power there?
Well, there's a large body of credible reportage by credible news organizations that show that over a 20-year period, Israel, and particularly Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has encouraged the growth of Hamas as a way of dividing the Palestinian opposition to Israel. So supporting the Palestinian Authority on one side and Hamas on the other side to counterbalance the authority of the PA. And now this policy of supporting Hamas over a long period of time has come back to bite the Israeli population, not Netanyahu so much, but ordinary Israelis. So this is a group that certainly in its early days was nurtured by Israel, and thereafter that responsibility was taken up by Iran, which is implacably opposed to Israel. Iran is now Hamas's main and probably only real supporter. Iran provides money, arms, training, diplomatic cover for Hamas. And Israel may rue the fact that 20 years ago, when they had an opportunity, they chose not to sort of side with the Palestinian Authority in defeating Hamas. But that ship has long since sailed.